here. And so the episode will be recorded today. If you have to leave, then you can always go back at the recording. The recording is available usually about 24 hours later. It is also available in the Thrive in EDU group. And I would love for everybody to join that group, become members of the group, because then you can see all the recordings, you can get the notifications, or see who is coming up on the show. I do have episodes lined up over the next couple of weeks. Next week, I have 2 episodes actually. On Tuesday, I'm having Lavana Roth. And then on Wednesday, I'm having members of the ISTE Teacher Education Network who are working in higher education. And so we'll have great discussions next week. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and then ask Justin for verification that he can see it.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. So as I said, welcome to Learning Revolution, Wednesdays at 4, although sometimes I do have bonus episodes. My good friend Justin, I feel I can say that. My good friend Justin is here. We're actually not that far apart from each other. He is based right outside of Pittsburgh as well. And I often say I'm from Pittsburgh, even though I live about a half an hour from the city. But today we're going to be talking about back to school innovative tips. And I'll just tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'll let Justin introduce himself. If you didn't know, my name is Rachelle Dene Poth. I would love to connect with you if we're not already connected on Twitter, Dene915, also on Instagram. Love learning. I am a Spanish and STEAM teacher. I'm also a consultant and an attorney. So clearly I love school. I keep pretty busy with some different activities. I am now officially this month the past president of ISTE's Teacher Education Network. And I stay connected in some different ambassador programs and PLNs, which you can see there on the screen. I'm also an author and a blogger, and the pictures on the screen just kind of represent the importance to me of learning from my students, learning and connecting with other educators from around the world like we're doing here today. And all of that in the last couple of years has led me to write more. And so I've written a couple of books in the past year where I share a lot of the experiences with my students and the ideas and things that we've done in my classroom, so that I can hopefully make it easier for teachers to get started with some ideas that maybe you've been thinking about trying, but for lack of time, like we all have, you haven't really started yet. So sharing all of that, and also have some student stories in there and a lot of stories from other educators who've used some of these things in their classroom. And so that is a little bit about me, but I'm going to shift over to Justin and let Justin tell you all about himself. So thank you for being here today, first of all.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for being here. And one of the questions in the chat, when do you sleep? And I always wonder about that with you as well. I mean, you're just on top of it and absolutely a national leader when it comes to education. And thank you so much for having me. Again, my name is Justin Aglio. I'm the Director of Academic Achievement and District Innovation for the Montour School District, located within the Pittsburgh region. That's a fancy title for Curriculum Director. So in case you're wondering, what exactly does that mean? So I help with the principal, superintendent within our district with the curriculum, instruction, and assessment within our district, and coordinate those efforts. I'm also a Learn Lab Fellow at Carnegie Mellon University. I get a chance to work a lot with researchers, to connecting practitioners and researchers together with each other in the best interest of student outcomes. And like Rachelle, I'm a Getting Smart columnist, adjunct STEM professor at California University of Pennsylvania, and future ready thought leader as well. And I'd love to get a chance to connect with you. My Twitter is at Justin Aglio. Very simple. It's my first and last name. So if you get a chance, please connect with me. And again, thank you, Rachelle, for having me.
Yeah, and yours is easy. Your Twitter handle is easy, straightforward. Mine, a little bit, I mean, it's first initial, middle name, but I'm often called Renee because of it, but that's totally fine. I know, I get it all the time. Even from people that know me, you just kind of, you see it and then that association you forget. But yeah, we would love to connect with you on Twitter. And if you're learning something or something like a takeaway from today, talking here with Justin, definitely share it out on Twitter. Use the hashtag for Learning Revolution and just let us know. Also in the chat, and I'm going to stop sharing for now, but also in the chat, if you haven't already said where you're joining from, let us know. If you have questions, put those in there as well. We would love to hear, you know, from you, what your experiences are, any questions you have for Justin, because I can tell you, Justin does a lot of things. He says that about me, but Justin has really, I think I first officially met you at Ed Camp. I think it was the first Ed Camp that I'd ever been to.
At Montour. I mean,
maybe. Oh, I think it was at
City High, maybe. Or
yeah. Oh, you know what? I think it was a Propel. Yeah. And I had no idea what to expect, but that was kind of the start of so many changes. Like looking back from then till now, just how much the world has changed, how much my role has changed, and the things I'm doing in my classroom and all the learning that has happened from then until now by being connected. But I'm always interested to see what you're doing at Montour and all of the great things that are coming from that school, especially in areas of innovation and going back to school, thinking about, okay, there are so many unknowns. How do we prepare? And I was just talking with Dave Schmittou about, like, what do we focus on? But anything from this week, I mean, just before we dive deep into the innovative tips, but maybe, I don't know, anything from this week that you could share, like, what do we do when we're looking at, like, how do I prepare? We don't know anything. It's embracing the unknown.
Well, I'm going to talk about that today, because that's actually one of the tips is what you just said about, because that's what we have to do. So that might be a nice transition to start. What do you think?
That sounds good. That was not intentional, but that works perfectly.
Well, again, thanks, Rachelle, and thanks everybody for joining along. So I'm just going to go through some innovative tips, and I'm going to start with 3 of them. But before I do that, I'm actually going to start with really defining what innovation is, right? Because it's featuring new methods, advanced and original new methods, of new ways of thinking. And I want to stress about that, because in education, if you think about it, for many, many years, especially as a curriculum director, principal, teacher, we've always adopted things. I've always adopted a new social emotional learning program. I've always adopted a new math program, a new behavioral system. Educators, that's what we're known for, adopting. But now, since back March, and especially now, we're now, instead of adopting, we are adapting. So everything we're doing right now has to be innovative, because we're now adapting to the needs of our community, needs to our families, our parents, and most importantly, we're adapting to the needs of our students, our children. And when it comes to innovation, when you're adapting, it starts and ends with people. So forget about the programs, forget about systems and platforms, and focus on the people driving those innovations, because those are the ones who have to lead the charge as we go down this road. And I know times are confusing, they're hard, they're insane. That's what I hear in the field. Oh, this is craziness. I can't believe this is, someone said the other day, this is like a time bomb ready to go off, and things like that. And I know the walls around us are just surrounding us, but I want to go back to Randy Pausch, a famous author, the author of The Last Lecture, professor at Carnegie Mellon, the late and great Randy Pausch. And he talked about the brick walls are there for a reason. The brick walls are not there to keep us out. The brick walls are there to give us a chance to show how badly we want something, because the brick walls are there to stop the people who don't want it badly enough. They're there to stop the other people. So as educators, as we see these brick walls, we feel like surrounding us, and we have no place to go, and there's so much uncertainty. I know one thing about educators, I work with them every day. We have these sledgehammers that we carry all the time in our backpacks. And when we see these brick walls, we take those out and we knock them down. And that's the great thing about education, is that's how we embrace the creativity, is when those brick walls come around us, our educators' hats, it's like a natural reaction. Okay, no problems. I know it's tough. I know it, but I'm going to get through this. I'm going to pull my sledgehammer out. I'm going to break the walls down. So kind of moving forward, I want to talk a little bit about 3 innovative tips that are helping me guide, and then I'm telling people to help guide us through these uncertainty times. And that's actually number 1, is embracing uncertainty. And if you think about things that are uncertain, it causes a stress level in us. My wife and my family, we were coming back from vacation. And I remember one time my wife and I were in the front seat, and we're going back and forth because, before we left, I had our GPS or Google Maps lined up. I had 2 options. I can go this option or this option. It's more highway, takes about 20 minutes longer, but it's a straight shot. And those are my 2 paths I wanted to go down. So I was like, okay, let's pick this path. And she's like, okay, well, if we have to, we'll switch this path. If traffic, there's a turnover. So it's like, great, we have our 2 options. We have our good and we have our better one. We start driving, we lose our signal. And my wife's trying to find it, it's trying to reroute. And we're like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? We're lost. And we weren't really lost, but that uncertainty of where to go and where to turn caused so much panic and stress in us. So even though we have good options and bad options sometimes, it's those uncertainty options that cause that panic and stress. And I remember about 5 years ago, I was in Los Angeles at the Schools That Can National Conference. And I'm sitting in the audience, and there's a CEO from a company. And he said to me, he said, or said to the group, he said, we look for three things when we employ people. Three things. I'm thinking in the back of my mind, what is it? Writing skills, teamwork, computer science skills. What are the things that this CEO looks for in his candidates when he employs them? He said, number three, I'm looking for a problem solver, someone who can solve problems when I give them a situation. Number two, I'm looking for a creative person, someone who thinks different, someone who looks at something and says, what about this? And number one, he said, I'm looking for a person that is nimble. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I was like, wow, when we think about education, we don't have a class. We have a social studies class, but maybe we should have a class on how to be nimble. And so with that, it almost forces us during this time right now to be nimble and model how to be nimble, but create these design pathways for students to allow them to be nimble and shift along the way. Don Norman, the great design thinker, said that good design is invisible, bad design becomes visible. And so when we lay out these, we just had a town hall meeting yesterday at our school district, Montour, at the elementary school. And our two principals did an amazing job presenting our plan moving forward. And at the end, we had 210 questions. And, I looked back and I said, wow, I thought we covered everything. But they saw these questions in there. Doesn't mean the plan was bad, but we knew that we had to go back, and there's some things that became visible to other people. So we have to go back and adjust that plan so the plan becomes invisible to those people. And always, you'll see typically plans with holes in it end up on Facebook, and that's when they become really visible in your school community. So this time right now, this embracing uncertainty really makes us go back and how to become nimble, how do we become adaptable and flexible and embrace this change. And, we can have a plan A or 1.0 or plan E or 5.0. And a lot of districts have this plan A, plan B, plan C. One district I know has a 3-point plan 3.0. Well, that's okay in this time. And as educators and as communities, we have to be okay having those multiple plans, but we have to also communicate those multiple plans too. It reminds me of, when I was a principal, my co-principal and I used to talk about good waves and bad waves. And when we have these plans or things that are going on and they're not always certain, it's the waves are crashing. But then when the plans are working and everything's certain and it's going really well, the wave's high. Now, in life, the waves always do what? They crash. Well, in your plans, they always crash because like now, things happen where they crash. So, but you'll see whether you're in a classroom or administrator, the really, whether it's plan A or plan E, the good plans are the ones that are made by people to allow the goodness to come up again. And you have to have that mindset, say, hey, things aren't going to be perfect, but when they crash, we're going to build it back up and we're going to help you figure this out. So installing that mindset in your community really helps. And there's one thing with all this uncertainty that really keeps everything at the core and really makes everyone understand the vision. And that's having a set of good core values. So you can have uncertainty, you can have multiple plans, you can teach how to be nimble, but if you don't have good core values, your plans will never work. So at Montour School District, we have 3 core values, systematic core values: putting children first, supporting a growth mindset, and creating a learning culture. So everything we do, we focus on children. And I know a lot of people say, oh, that's everything we do. But no, I'm sincere when I say that. Every decision that we make, we look at each other. Is that the best interest of our students? And if the answer is no, no matter how good of an idea it seems to us, we scratch the plan and we start over again. We also support a growth mindset. So think about that. How can we every day teach a growth mindset from everyone in the entire district? Because if something doesn't work, or if we want to try a new idea that doesn't make sense to us, how important is that to have that growth mindset ingrained in your culture? And the third one is supporting a learning culture. So when you have a learning culture, everyone learns. And it's not, this is my idea, and if it doesn't work, so what? You have to learn from other people and move forward from there. Now, at Montour School District, and you know, we, just like everyone else, we're trying to come up with a plan that supports our community. So right now, we have three options that we gave parents. First option, come back to school face-to-face. We did a survey, and as of yesterday, 87% of families said they want their children to come back to school. We were just featured on the news last week as some of our things we're doing to make sure we have a safe environment, spraying classrooms down, 6 feet apart, purchasing masks and face shields for all students, doing temperature checks every day. Some parents feel like that's a safe option to go back to school. We also purchased our second option, remote learning. Every single classroom in an entire district will have a video camera. So if you do not want to come to school, you could sit at your house and follow along with some guidance by a guardian and participate via video live every single day. And the third option is that cyber school option, where it's asynchronous learning throughout the whole time with a teacher online, but also a teacher checking in with you throughout the time you're doing the cyber option within that content area. So will those plans work 100%? Maybe not, but that's okay, because we have backup plans, and we are going to embrace that and shift if we have to and be nimble with it. But the true test isn't if the plan works today. The true test is going to be if the plan works in August, at the end of August, when the students and families come back to school, and making sure that we have everything in place from now until then to make sure those plans work. So kind of recapturing that innovative tip of one of embracing uncertainty, you have to be nimble. You have to have a core values of everything you do. And you have to really embrace that. Now, if you don't have core values and you don't know what your core values are within your school district, now is a better time than ever to go back and have those values, because you can branch off and things happen. But as long as you come back to those core values, everything's flowing in the right direction. You're probably saying, Justin, you know, this is nice. This is all in a perfect land. Yeah, we want to do this, but you know, what are the things that can really help us today in the classroom? So I want to talk to you about my second tip for having an innovative mindset during this time, and that's what's in your toolbox. I think like an artist. If I give an artist supplies and I said, paint this picture, and they said, well, I need like paint. You know, I have a brush, I have an easel, and I have a canvas, but I don't have the paint to do it. Well, we have to make sure teachers have and educators have all the tools they need. And we have to come up with innovative programs to help that. You know, there's great resources out there. Rachelle has a lot of great books on how to be innovative. So, you know, how do we learn like that? You can look at great products, but I'll tell you this, I would not go find new products and new programs just for the sake of going to get something new. Figure out in the past what worked really well. Look at that. Things that didn't work, get rid of those. And things that, again, that worked really well, how do you embrace that and go deeper with what it is? So in the spring, we told that to our teachers. Now's the time to try something, but and also go back to the tools that we have, and then recommend to us over the summertime, what are the tools you need when you come back to school that will make you successful in the fall? So we did a couple of those things. We also looked at programs that we have established in the past to make sure we're meeting all the needs of learners, like things like artificial intelligence and adaptive software tutoring systems. I had a parent call me in the spring and they said, Dr. Aglio, all this stuff on a computer my child's doing at home, I'm not really sure if it's the best option for them. What's the point of this? I'm just going to pull them off the computer. I feel like I'm wasting their time. They should be in front of a teacher learning something, but I know that's not an option. So I'm just going to give them chores to do at home and so forth. I said, what do you mean it's a waste of time? I just see them do math problems. How do I know someone's checking them? I said, sir, all the problems that your child's doing online, it's actually collected through a dashboard system that we're monitoring everything your child's doing, but it's also adaptable too to meet the needs of your child. And it's recommending them things they need to be successful through the sophisticated software, this educational technology that we embraced as a school system, and know that your child's needs are being met through these adaptive software tutoring systems. And they come back in the fall, we're going to know where your child is because we're going to have all that data collected from March till June on that child. And not just using AI from that time, but also teaching AI. It's not one thing for students to use this technology, but they have to actually understand it. So as Rachelle knows, we started the first artificial intelligence program K through 12 in the country, where students are understanding machine learning. They understand what it is to be autonomous. They understand data outputs and data inputs, because we want them to be part of this revolution, understand why they're doing things and looking at their data and become data literate through this process. Another thing we started last year was an esports program. And I highly encourage everyone to really look into esports. In fact, when we started this last year, we had no idea that we were going to close school. Nobody did. And it really worked out really cool, because in the spring, in March, when everybody was told to go home, per the governor, all the sports, baseball, the spring sports, track and field got canceled, except for one sport in our school district, esports. And we actually made, as a first-year program, the national playoffs in esports and competed. So, and it really gave us a culture boost within our school district, because we had a chance to compete for something with our students. And now coming into this year, we have a 280 square foot video wall, a 5v5 esports arena that is fully decorated for face-to-face competition. But we also know that students can compete virtually with that as well. So we're really excited to venture down that road. Esports, it's a tool in our toolbox that I think is going to be really helpful for the keep students working together as a team, to get them engaged in school. And the reason why we went esports is because we wanted to create a culturally inclusive program for all students. So when students, if they wanted to get exposure in technology, they didn't have to get tracked into a computer science program and be tracked. And if you wanted to join that, it was too late for it. We wanted all students to have the ability to learn about STEM workforce and computer science as well. And when we go through these tools, we also want to think about mental awareness and social emotional learning. And what are we doing to address that? We just partnered with a company called Teamology. And the reason why we partner with them, going back to AI again, is because their platform is they have chatbots. And so it's not just an in-person curriculum, but it's also an online curriculum where students are, being exposed to technology like AI to really understand not just the academic content like we do, but now the social emotional piece as well. So I highly recommend to check out. There's so many tools out there right now and places to find these, and articles like Getting Smart, EdSurge, eSchool News, and so forth, to check out what tools are available. We can be a resource for you as well moving forward. And when we think about technology, as you know, it's not just something that's separate now. It's something that we have to embrace. And I remember going back when we started this remote learning back in March 13th, someone said, oh, this is going to be a challenge. I said, I don't think so. I said, we've been doing remote learning almost in face-to-face in person for the past couple of years, because we had an emphasis on blended learning. We had an emphasis on digital citizenship through common sense education. And then when students had to go home, they knew how to learn on their own. They knew how to collaborate online, and they knew how to do it in a safe way. So moving on, so we have embracing uncertainty. We have what's in your toolbox. And the third tip is simply opportunities. What are the opportunities that you have in front of you? What lessons are you learning? I've been saying all along, we've learned more in the past 5 months in education than the last 5 years. And if you think about people for the last 5, 10 years, they said, hey, let's disrupt education. Well, guess what? It's disrupted. So what are you going to do about it now? Are you going to try to go back to the norm? Are you the one that's been fighting for change? And since change is here, you want to go back? I mean, we can all say we want change, but who's actually going to change along the way? So to help with these opportunities, stay focused. Really stay focused. And Rachelle talked about that earlier. What are you going to focus on? For us, we focus on our community needs. We focus on making sure our teachers have the tools and resources they need, and making sure we're communicating every step along the way with our parents by working with local health and educational experts. So to help with that, help stay focused, you also have to think positive, and you have to rest on your certainties. So even though there's a lot of uncertainties, what are those things that you're resting on that are certain? So think about this. I had a department chair meeting the other day with a group of teachers, and I said, listen, we can't focus on the things we can't control. Let's focus on what we can control. Let's go back and look at your curriculum. What are the essential standards we can focus on? What are some things that we can look at assessment-wise that we can do? Let's focus on those things that we can control, and let's maybe hope for the best, but plan for the worst. But we all have this list of, but Justin, this is happening. We don't know what's going to happen. It's a time bomb. This is crazy. We need guidance. We need more information. So I can make a list of 50 things, 25 things that are happening right now that are probably bad. And I can only make maybe a list of 1, 2, or 3 really good things. So take the weight of those really good things and focus on that. Even if you have 3 things that are good compared to the 50 bad things, what are those 3 things? 1, we're going to communicate with their students again. I mean, wow, talk about that. How can you not be excited about that? 2, you're going to learn all these new, great, innovative ways to teach. That's pretty cool. And that's not just for this year. It's going to be 3, 5, 10 years from now. So what are those? Make a list, all those good things. Throw out all those bad things and focus on the certainty things and make sure they're all good, and focus and get rid of all the uncertainty, bad things that are happening right now. And I want to kind of wrap up a little bit by thinking of this situation as 2 ships floating in the ocean, right? You have this back to school ship and you have this culture ship. And on this back to school ship, you have things like programs, technology, safety, cleaning, and so forth. Now, all those things we have to do to align what's happening right now in school. But say you have this culture ship next to your back to school ship. If you're focused on everything you need to do to get ready back to school and you're checking off the boxes, but you're not focusing on this culture ship with your team, making sure mentally they're okay, giving them inspirational messages and so forth. And that back to school ship keeps going, and that culture ship's left behind. That back to school ship, I guarantee, will sink. It will float right to the bottom. That culture ship, if you're just focusing on that, and you're not focused on the back to school stuff, things, the checkbox things you need to do, and the culture ship goes, that's eventually going to sink too, because it's all going to be talk. The secret of everything that we want to do is focus on those 2 ships working together, and they're floating side by side. And you're dedicating 50% of the time to culture and 50% of the time to those back to school checklist items that you have to do. So what are those good things? Focus on that, and let's embrace the uncertainty. Let's dig into that toolbox and be innovative, and let's find the opportunities that can come from this and embrace those and move forward. Again, Rachelle, thank you so much. I know that everyone is out there looking for that fairy tale gold dust to sprinkle at people and say, this is what you have to do. But it really comes down to getting over that mindset, finding things that work for you, and continuing down that path. And I feel like again, as educators, we have those sledgehammers, and I don't think we're really afraid of anything. And once we get over that hurdle of getting over the fact that, you know, this is uncertain, that it's going to be messy, if we get over that mindset, I think everything else will fall in place for people, even though it's a dangerous place. But I guarantee one thing: we're here together. I'm here to learn from you. You're here to learn from me. And as long as we continue to communicate with each other, I think our students are in good hands.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. And there were two questions in the chat, but just before that, and I know we'll wrap up here, but the idea, going back to innovative, and that's a word that for some people can be scary, because same as the word creative, right? You might say, like, I'm not creative, I'm not innovative, but innovative just means doing something different, trying something new that you've never done before. And maybe for a teacher, I'm going to throw it out there, like esports, right? Look into that. That's a good opportunity, especially looking for students. You know, you said all the sports seasons were canceled, and so you still had the esports. But even with artificial intelligence, for me as a Spanish teacher, I never saw that I could teach anything about artificial intelligence until I started to teach STEAM. But that, I mean, there's so much in that, just looking at how some of the tools that we're using in our classroom, it really can help students to, like, it adapts to their learning and to their progress. But really quickly, one question that was in there: how important is a contingency plan preparing for a contingency? And then David had asked, do you envision education as a whole being reimagined with new levels of understanding and engagement? Big questions.
Yeah. So it's important to have contingency plans and backup plans, but you know, you can look at it saying, if this happens, what's our backup plan? You know, so we took the mindset approach of it is, you have, okay, here's your back to school face-to-face, or you can do remote learning, or you can do cyber learning. Now, your contingency plan, if school shuts down and we go 50%, well, 50% of students will come into school with remote learning and cyber. Now, say school's shut down, well, we're doing remote learning and cyber. So even though plans may shift based upon health concerns, that remote learning and cyber is on all three plans. And so our goal is to not start over and never say, okay, here's our plan, we're switching to this. It's okay, we're going home, now we're on remote learning. We've been doing it already, we know what it looks like, and we're going to continue down that path. So I would say the contingency plans should be part of your overall plan somehow, so you're not making shifts and jumping here to there. What was the other thing?
It was a question from, I think, from David, and I just scrolled down, about, do you envision education as a whole being reimagined with new levels of understanding and engagement? Yeah,
so that's a great question. So, you know, someone asked me the question the other day is, well, if kids are at home, how can we assess them? I was like, what do you mean? And they said, well, they could just look up the answers. And I was like, well, if they can look up the answers in your class by Googling it, why are you assessing that way? So yes, to some degree, those things that we always knew that were best for students, yes, it does make us change a little bit and forces us to change. And that's a good thing. Even someone said, well, what about this video in the classrooms? Like, is that going to be this year? I was like, I don't know. Maybe it'll be forever. Maybe it's going to be totally different. We can't think about, you know, what are we going to do just the next month or two? You know, I'm hoping that the changes that we do make are changes that stick, and changes that, you know, are going to occur in our district for many years, and we get better with that. I mean, I think it's a great idea to give kids options and parents options on how to learn and which way to learn. So I hope these changes stick, and I hope that we are forced to make changes and are forced to, instead of looking at what do students know, we focus on looking at what kind of questions we want to ask them.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I know assessment has definitely come up, especially just looking, you know, ask better questions, promote curiosity. And when I had to talk with Dave, there was something, I heard a podcast the other day and said, there's two words that you should always keep in your mind. I'm curious. To ask somebody, I'm curious why you did this, or I'm curious what you were thinking when you created this, or I'm curious how you might solve this problem differently. And
well, Rachelle, just two notes is that people say, well, how did you come up with esports? How did you come up with AI? How do you come up with these things, your school district? To us, innovation comes down to listening and supporting. And someone, when I was introduced at ASCD a couple of years ago, they introduced me on stage as a futurist. And I'm thinking, wow, I've never been called that before. And I'm thinking in my mind as I'm walking to the microphone, what's a futurist? And it hit me, it's the same thing. It's someone who can listen and be supportive to make someone's reality come true. And that's my job, I believe, as a curriculum director. And so when our students said, we want esports, we listened and we supported them. When our middle school principal said, I want students to become data literate and have STEM inquiry skills, we listened and supported them and made an AI program around that. So I would say that, and in your curious term, when you walk into Montour Elementary School, that's the first thing you see, curious. We want students to be that. In fact, 2 years ago, the winner of the National Science Fair contest, a 13-year-old boy, through artificial intelligence, he won the National Science Fair. And they said, why did you pick AI? And he said, because I was curious about it. And I wanted to learn more about it. And that was really, really cool to hear that, he was just curious. So how can we tap into the more curiosity? And that, I think it's not just students, but as a school administrator, I'm interested in learning how teachers are curious about things as well, and principals.
Yeah, that is one of the things I love about when I've come out to Montour for a couple of different conferences and events, and just even to see the AI, and you have the Minecraft, you got the esports, you have all of these things going on, but even just on the walls, the student work and the words and the phrases and everything, it's really a great space to be and learn. And I hope that people will check out Montour just to get an idea of some of the things that are happening in that district, because you can do those in your classroom too. I mean, you just have to start with, you don't have to do all the things. We're talking about that earlier, but just pick something and look at the opportunities that it provides for students. And I know just with the curious kind of thing, curiosity for my students in STEAM, doing Genius Hour and project-based learning, where they come up with their own ideas and they try something. And I had a student do this, and he went around his house and he grabbed just random objects to try and make some kind of air-conditioned backpack contraption. I don't know where he came up with that idea, but he just sent me the picture and I was looking at it and I wrote back to him, okay, I'm curious what you were trying to do, what was the process? And so then I understood, and I could go back and look at the picture, but I thought, that is pretty neat that he's doing that. And he was just deciding, well, I'm going to keep working on it. And it was a problem with the voltage and stuff. And I thought, that's the kind of opportunities that we need for our students to have and to be okay with it, even though at first initially it feels uncomfortable, to give them that choice and to drive their own learning. But to really do the best for them, we have to let them go. So,
as you're talking like that, as a teacher, you said, I'm curious why you did this. It makes me think back to my childhood. Anytime I ever heard a teacher say, I'm curious why you did this, I always felt like I was in trouble.
I know.
Now it's like we teach that, hey, I'm curious about this. And the kid's like, oh, thank you. And back then I'm like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but that's something that we need to help our students, and to ask more questions too, because I mean, research shows that from the time they're young, 2 and 3 years old, the number of questions they ask throughout the week completely decreases by the time, I think, I had a conversation with my 9th grade students one time, and I said the average number, they were like, really? I said, well, that doesn't apply for everybody, because some of you in this class ask a lot of questions, which is not a bad thing. And sometimes they even apologize for asking questions, or, but yeah, you're right. When you say, I'm curious why, it shouldn't be a negative thing. It's just, you're interested in it and you want to try and see what they're doing. So yeah, David, that is so true. Student choice is critical, and David does a lot of great work with his students as well. So yeah, if anybody has any other questions, certainly follow up and reach out to me, reach out to Justin. I'll connect you with Justin.
Absolutely.
Check out the links that were dropped in there, because lots of things, and he shares everything when he writes on Getting Smart. So if you're looking for ideas for the AI, for esports, and anything, even just on innovation, STEAM, you name it, Justin has written on it. And also Norton, who is here, I think you two co-authored a post, right?
Yeah, Norton's the godfather of education.
Yeah, I know. I thought he said that about you.
The Norton's the godfather. I'm just I'm the understudy.
Yeah, but you're the futurist.
Yeah.
So I like that. I do like that. So, but yeah, I thank everybody for joining in today, and I will stop recording now.